They wrote me off and I ain't like that, so I'ma fight that. The bad man, damn right when you thought that it was safe to relax, you gotta stretch that. The bad man, bad dealers with me for real. They right here.
This is the Big LAC Show. It's your boy Big LAC, and we have Miss Ameerah in the building. Please do me a favor and start from the beginning.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so from the beginning, of course, my name is Ameerah A Rahman, and I was born in Brooklyn, New York, to my amazing parents. I was born and raised Muslim. I lived in New York until I was probably about the age of 11 or 12, and due to a lot of violence in the area and different things that were going on, my parents decided to uproot our entire family and actually move us across the country to California. So I moved across the country to California, lived there for a few years. My dad was a truck driver and my mother was a teacher. So he was always, pretty much over the road. And my mother, she was raising us girls and teaching in the schools and stuff like that. I had a love for writing as a child, love for drawing, and actually she was an artist, so she passed on her artist genes to me and a few other siblings where we would, write and we would draw and things like that. But as I got, older and, I think I started helping out in classrooms, and I became a teacher's aide at a very young age. Possibly when I was about 17, I started helping out in classrooms, on my free time, just, you trying to earn your your little credits for college and stuff like that. So I wind up going into teaching. So I was a teacher for many years, from pre-K all the way up to 5th grade. I mostly like the younger grades, of course. Working with younger kids was always a thing of mine, just giving them that the core education, especially when you're working in our schools and you're discovering that, a lot of kids are not reading by the time they're in 3rd grade, or they're not reading on reading level and stuff like that. So I was really into teaching them, the reading and the writing, So I fell in love with being a teacher, being a mentor to the youth. And that's where I discovered plays and being part of helping the kids with doing plays and, just writing plays and things of that nature. So after a few years of teaching, I actually got into mentoring some of the youth. And then that's when I discovered at-risk youth. Our at-risk youth are youth that are inside of the school systems and foster care system, and also group home settings, and also the detention centers. And the age group I've always worked with are young people from the age of 12 to 18. So I work with them for years, and it's amazing, some of their backstories and things of that nature. There's always a lot of things going on that people don't understand in our young people's lives. So, having to go into the school sometimes and help, teachers better understand that maybe one of the kids in their classroom is a child who's actually displaced. And when we see displaced is that they're taken from their homes and placed in a group home, setting. And they're frustrated, they're angry, they're upset, and they don't know how to express that because a lot of our kids don't have coping skills. A lot of adults don't have coping skills. So, so I began to work with a lot of those type of kids. And I still do that today. I do work in a group home. I work with about six teenagers, girls or boys. Mostly the girls. Not really into the boys too much. They have poor hygiene.
Wow.
But I will say, even though the boys have poor hygiene, they're basically quiet. It's just that if you can bear the smell, they're good to go. But I mostly work with the girls because, I want to be that role model for them. I want to, show them a good example of someone who's, out here and, working and, may have even trouble in her past. Because I'll say probably about 15, 16, yeah, I was getting in a lot of trouble that my parents did not approve of. because of course, growing up Muslim, you have a really restricted life and it's really strict. But of course, you want to get out there and you want to do what the other kids are doing, and you try it. I tried it. I tried it often. And my parents were like, that was cute. You can come on back home. So, you explain to them your past sometimes, and just, it helps them understand that it doesn't matter where you come from, where where you could possibly be going in life. It's up to you. Those are your choices. So I've done a lot of work with them. We with the arts, art therapy. And art therapy is when they get to, like, you give them a word and they get to either paint or draw or describe what that word means to them. And, and it's, and they'll do it with art, art. So they'll come up with different pictures, even if you say happy. And sometimes, you may say happy to a child or a youth, and you'll find their description of happy is totally different than yours. So it's good to do that to get to know the youth. So that has always been my main goal, my main focus in life is mentoring the youth and just hopefully changing someone's life. You may not touch everyone's life, and that's something I learned along the way. Is like, you're not going to change everybody's life. You're not going to you can't save everyone, but that one or two that you do change or impact them in a positive way, where they come back later and like, oh yeah, I remember you. I've been on the street and I'll have some older child like, hey, Miss R, hey. They used to call me the Rock in one facility I used to work at, and I was standing there like, okay, who knows this name? And you'll see a full adult who has dramatically, changed their lives and has grown for the better. I have one girl, she went to the Navy, after being in foster care pretty much all her life. And she was in Spain. I was like, okay, wow, and now, those are our success stories that make us continue to do, or make me continue to do what I do on a daily basis. So I would say I've been doing that for years. We're not going to disclose my age, so y'all just get the years. But during that process, and even when I was younger, I used to write all the time. I always wanted to write stories and write books. And around 16, I think I was approaching the mall for modeling. And everybody was like, oh, people were like, oh, can you come, join our modeling agency, come walk for us and things of that nature. And of course, I wanted to do it, but growing up Muslim, it wasn't really allowed. My parents, of course, and as any parents and other parents, you think you're going to lose your child along the way if they get involved in, the industry. So, of course, my parents were like, no, you will not be acting. You will not be modeling. You have to take your clothes off. You have to do this, that, and the other. Because a lot of times our description or what we see as models, yeah, they do, but there are modest models out there. But they get scared that you're going to get involved with drugs and alcohol and, things of that nature and lose your way. So my parents were like, no, nope, nope, no. So I put that dream at the age of 16 on the back burner, because I was just like, okay, you can't do it because, of course, your parents said you can't do it. And, of course, it's not really encouraged in your area, or in your environment to do so. So I kind of like left that alone for many years and just focused on my work with the youth and focused on mentoring and focused on just organizing activities and really just being deeply involved in whatever community I was in. I moved here to Georgia, to Atlanta, Georgia in 2009. I had recently been divorced for about 2 years, so I relocated, and I was like, okay, let's try Georgia. Let's see how it is. I lived in Michigan. I was tired of the cold and tired of the snow. Even when it sprinkles snow here, I have a whole attitude. I'm like, oh no, why are you snowing? This is Georgia. Because you hear about all the good weather, especially when you live up north. You're like, oh yeah, it's warm. Georgia, California, Texas. I tried Texas once, but just for a visit. It was so hot there. I was like, okay, I don't like this extreme cold, and neither do I like the extreme heat. So I guess Georgia became a nice little balance, even though it never seems like it never knows when the weather wants to change here. So I just go with the flow, but I don't like the snowflakes. even the flurries. I mean, the first year I moved here in 2009, and that year, I think it was in January, and there was flurries. And I was like, but they said it doesn't snow in Georgia. So I'm looking around like, okay, someone tricked me. But I'm okay with it now. Like, I'm kind of adjusting to Georgia weather, even though it's been thunder and storming and raining here for the last week. And I'm like, okay, you can go away now. It's July. It's July. Who does that? It's time and month. You're supposed to be nice and warm and let me relax without having to grab a jacket or umbrella. But it is what it is. So when I moved here, so let's talk about 2009 when I moved here. I moved to Georgia thinking that I would go. At the time, I was in Michigan. I was working for a detention center. And I moved to Georgia, and I was like, okay, just go right back into the detention centers here and, just keep on going. And the first year I lived here was probably one of the worst years ever because the job opportunities wasn't there the way I thought they were going to be. Oh my gosh, I couldn't get into the detention centers the way I wanted to. You had to start at the bottom, but I had already been working at the detention centers in Georgia for so many years. I was like, I got to start from scratch. I got to take a pay cut. I was having all kinds of heart attacks. I was like, this is wrong. And I never forget, I was at an interview and they were like, you get the job or whatever. And I was calling that Monday to go for orientation. And they was not answering their phone. I was like, what's going on? Hello? I was like, so you have somebody coming, but you don't know how to answer your phone. The lady finally answers, and she was like, I'm really sorry. And I was like, what you mean? What you talking about? She said, we decided to hire someone else. And I was like, can you do that when you've already hired somebody? And she was like, well, actually, this is the right to hire state. Let me tell you, I'd never heard of that before. I was like, a what? And I was like, that's when you hit Google, like Google. A what? I said, what does she mean by it? She was like, yeah, if they decide that they want someone else, they could just, I guess, switch it or just fire you. And I was like, but I didn't get here yet. I wasn't even hired all the way. I didn't even get to orientation. So, of course, that was extremely upsetting. Even trying to get into the school system was really hard. And I was like, I've never seen a place that was this difficult to get into work. And so, of course, I went home and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm ready to break down and cry because I was like, I don't have a job. Like, what am I supposed to be doing? And I started assisting. Someone else had called me up and they were like, oh, you want to assist at a school? And I was like, no, I was trying not to teach anymore. I was trying to stay in the detention centers. I don't want to go to the schools. And I was like, well, maybe. So I started doing that part-time. So I wound up with a lot of free time on my hand. And I was just like, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I guess I'll write. I was like, that's my passion. I was like, and I used to always journal and stuff like that. So I started writing, and within, I think, 6 months, I finished my first book. And it's called The Unveiled, and I self-published. And then I started having, book parties, poetry parties. So my first book was 7 different stories that were about American Muslim lives. Because when you say Muslim and people see Muslims, they have this idea of who you are, or they already think they already know, and they have a lot of misconceptions. So I wanted to tell stories about our lives that people could relate to, inspirational stories. So I wrote 7 different stories inside of that book. I self-published it. I got it on Amazon.com, ArthurHouse.com. Then I found out someone else hit me up and they were like, did you know your book was on Books A Million? I was like, no. And I'm like, okay, this book is just going, the book was just going places. And I was like, okay, what's going on? And I was at an event and there was a few young ladies there and they were like, oh, we heard you have a book. And I was like, well, yeah. And so one of the girls, she came to me and she was like, your first story in that book changed my life. And I was standing there, I was like, what? And she was crying. And I was just like, okay, like, of course, I wrote it. I'm not, of course, I'm not going to know how it impacts someone else's life. And she said, it really changed my life. She said, I was in a dark space, and you were talking about praying to God when you're in that dark space. And I mean, she really broke down, and she, really told me how it changed her life. And I'll say today, she has done so many amazing and empowering things today. She's completely, I would say, 2021, she's a completely different person. She's always in legislative. She's everywhere. Like when I be looking on Facebook, I'm like, who are you today? And she told me, she was like, it gave her the strength to speak out, to express herself more and tell people how she feels, or go into law, and just because she went to school for law, she went back to school, everything. And I was like, wow, you would never think that just your words would be so impacting or impactful on someone else's life. So once that book was done, and so many people were writing me from different states, and I just was like, wow, I didn't think it was going to make such a large impact, but it really, really did. So after that, I wrote a children's book called Goodnight Joy. And then I wrote, and since I used to do poetry, I used to live in the poetry lounges, doing poetry, reciting poetry, and then at one point, of course, as you go on, your life gets kind of busy. So my life kind of got busy with my own children, and, just trying to make sure they were on the paths that they needed in life. So I had to slow down in that area, just trying to do everything, because you be trying to do everything that you want to do. Because I always tell people that the world is the world is big. You can do in like 5 things, all at one time, or do one thing for a couple of years and do another thing. But you can do whatever you want to do, whatever your mind is on, whatever you want to accomplish. And that's my testimonial, is that I don't think there's anything that I haven't set out to do that I have not accomplished in some type of way. From writing, to acting. Now I'm into acting. For the last, since like 2019. I decided in 2019 to take modeling more seriously. I'll say a couple of years before that, I would do modeling here and there, and I would pretty much actually just model in my community. They would have these shows called Sealed Nectar, and it was for women, and we only modeled in front of women. But we had so many amazing Muslim women who were designers, so they put on these shows and stuff like that, and it was to support the community, whether it's the community schools, whether it's the community church. That's what those shows were put on for. And people would pay, and they would come from out of town, come from all over, to actually be a part of, or to watch the shows. And we all, everyone will always discuss how, why aren't there, Muslim models in the industry? Why aren't there Muslim designers who are actually in the industry big time, not just in our immediate circles? So about 2019, I was like, you know what? I want to change that, because I would say it was challenging at first, because you have two different worlds looking at you. You have the industry and regular people who don't think you should be out there. Then you have your own community who's like, are you sure you want to do that? Will you be forced to do different things? Will you be forced to, take off your clothes and things of that nature, things that may make other people uncomfortable. And I was like, I know there's a balance. There's a balance in everything in life. So I decided to do it anyways. Because I really believe, and I believe in all my heart, I'm unstoppable. I whatever I want to do, I'm going to do it. And I always say, everyone else would just adjust. And I'm like, okay, put on y'all caps, because guess what? I'm coming for it all. And I will never forget my first model call audition. I went to it, and they kept looking at me, and they kept staring at me, and I was like, okay, why is everybody staring at me? And so the lady, she was like, okay, you have to have the little tank top, and you have to this. And she was like, and your scarf? And I was standing, I was like, well, that's not coming off. And she was like, what? I was like, well, I'm Muslim. And so I, politely, pulled her aside and explained it. She was like, well, I don't know how well you'll make it. And I was like, why? She was like, because, when you come to a call, this is what, the criteria are for that. And I was like, okay. And she told me no, but I came back anyways. And I came to another model call. Actually, what I started doing also was I started going to fashion shows because I wanted to see what was out there. I wanted to see, what the designers were doing, and how they felt about, a Muslim woman walking their runway, where I'm not able to just wear anything that you have on your rack. You may have to adjust, or you may have to give me something that's more modest covering. I'm like, okay, shirt and blazer, I can do that. And they're like, oh, so do you wear bikinis? You want to wear a bikini? I'm like, that's never happening. But they will ask, and things of that nature. So I would say getting into the model industry was very taskful in the beginning, but now I think that people have gotten to know me, or to see how serious I am and how I continue to show up. People are more open. They're like, okay, that's her. And I like, I'm the Muslim runway diva. I'm going to come to your runway and I'm going to slay your runway and I'm going to do it with style. And I'm here. So a lot, in the beginning, I got the funny looks. And then I even got like people would inbox me and they're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And I was like, oh my gosh, that's going to be so rough on you. And I'm like, okay, but how are you telling me how how I live my life, or how, to adjust to different things, and I've been at shows where a designer would not let me walk for them, and it was more that they were like, okay, but what are you going to do to my dress, or what are you going to do to my outfit, because what about your scarf? They're like, so what about, I was like, my turban is called my hijab. And they're like, so do you need to wear that on the runway? I'm like, yeah, I came here with it on my head. So when I walk the runway, it's going to still be on my head. And I think when people saw the reaction from the audience, they were like, oh, wow. Because most of the time when I hit the runway, people are screaming and stuff, and I just be like, okay, hey, how y'all doing? Of course, you can't look and say it, but they're so excited, and I'll hear like, oh my gosh, queen, or oh my gosh, even in the back, people are like, oh my God, you're such a Nubian queen, you're so beautiful, you're amazing, your walk is absolutely, clean, and, so once those things started happening, I think that things began to change. I know sometimes I do get a side eye, but I don't care about side eyes. Those things, they don't bother me. I'm extremely unbothered by people's opinions and thoughts, because you learn in life that those things don't pay you. Those things don't change who you are. Those things don't help you sleep at night. I sleep very comfortably at night, and I'm going to continue to make all the decisions that I make. And I was at one show, and it was absolutely beautiful dress made by Yolanda King. And I remember her looking at me. And I could talk about it to this day. She kept looking, and then she was just like, and then she looked at her team, and I remember her, saying to her team, because it was a backless dress, and it, it came across, and it had this big old bow, and it was absolutely stunning. It was absolutely beautiful. And I kept looking at it, and I was like, that dress is for me. I need to be in that dress. And she was looking like, but you can't show your body. And like sometimes I'll wear an entire unitard under, because I tell people all the time, if that dress was in a store and I decided to buy it, I would still wear it, but I would wear it my way. I would fix it up so that I'm comfortable in it and I'm still covered. So I remember she kept looking, and then she was like, I was like, her whole face, and the other people's face was looking like, okay, get another model. Get someone who can really, show this dress off. And I'm like, no, I'm going to slay your dress, and people are going to love it. And I remember she just was like, okay, fine. And I was like, yes. So I remember when I hit that runway with that dress on, and the crowd went wild, and she was like, oh wow. When I came back off the stage, she was like, oh my gosh, I love you, oh my goodness, okay. I'm like, yes, I told you, like, I'm about to slay this. So that was a really good experience for me, and a really good experience for other people to see that you know, I can still rock it no matter what, you know. And I remember later on, I called her and I was like, I need a dress again. And she was like, come get it. I needed it for an event. I needed it for a gala. And, you know, she was just like, come pick it up. And I was like, oh, yes, thank you. You know, let me slay your clothes. And I say that to even the designers out there. Allow me to slay your clothes. Allow me to slay your dresses. I'm amazing. Absolutely amazing. So, just following my, you know, my model dream and just really getting out there. So, like I said, I've been only doing it since 2019, and I have been published in, I would say, at this point, a good about 12 or 13 magazines. Yeah, about 12 or 13 magazines. Last May, yeah, it was May, March, May, no, yeah, it was April, May. I was published in 6 magazines. I kind of like take, you know, my own world into my own hands and just make sure that I'm getting out there, I'm telling my stories. I was interviewed, by, another lady, and, you know, just putting my story out there. And then, you know, Ty Davis, he is one of my favorite photographers. I worked with him. The first time I worked with him, I actually was a stylist, and they were doing the Urban Spice magazine, and they needed someone to come and wrap turbans for all the models that were in that magazine. And I think I saw something on Facebook, or somebody reached, what's his name, Wicker, he reached out to me and he was like, oh, okay, can you, you know, can you come and, you know, style the hijabs for us? And I was like, yeah, sure. You know, so I went and I styled the hijabs. I met Ty as a photographer, and I'm like, okay. So then I'm looking at his work, because if anyone knows me, I look at people's work. I don't just let you tell me who you are and things like that. And I want people to do that same thing with me. Is when I say I'm a model, if I'm a say I'm a writer, look at my work, and you know, and then decide whether you want to work with me or not. And we have that choice out here. So I looked at Ty Davis' work, and I absolutely loved his work. I love him as a photographer. He is always my go-to photographer for pretty much every shoot I've done. I'll call up Ty, be like, okay, I'm ready to do a shoot. I'm ready to do a shoot. And he's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to do a shoot again. I'd be like, what's my deposit? Because, you know, that's the first question. You'd be like, what's my deposit? And then my second favorite photographer is Daniel. I shot with him in May, and he's absolutely amazing as well. Like, his pictures, you know, he does a lot of outdoor shoots, and he finds the most craziest and amazing sights to shoot. And I'm like, okay, I be hitting him up. I'm like, okay, I want to shoot there. I want to shoot here. I want to shoot there. But so what I do is usually, like, you know, you work with your photographer, and then you submit to different magazines and see which magazine will pick you up as, you know, a model and an artist. You know, so I've had a lot of magazines say yes. And those are always your proud moments, when you get that email back and they're like, yes, you'll be in our May issue. Yes, you'll be in our March issue. And like the one shoot I did, I was in so many magazines back in May. I was like, oh yeah, okay, all right, I love this. So, you know, those are the good points that keep you doing what you're doing. You know, and I say to models out there, because models always ask me when I'm at a model call or rehearsal, they're like, okay, how do you do this? How do you do that? And I'm always giving advice, you know, to other models, and just telling them, okay, if this is really what you want, you're gonna have to do it, and you're gonna have to invest in yourself, because a lot of people, you know, they want to do stuff, but they're not willing to invest. And you have to invest in yourself. And if you got to take a part-time job to take those finances to invest in what you're trying to do, you have to invest in yourself, or it's not going to happen. No one's just going to pick, you know, people think they're just going to pick you and you're going to be signed and all this stuff. No, they need to see your work. So what work are you going to do before they sign you? What work are you going to do before someone says, okay, you're amazing, you're great, you know? And that even goes into acting. I think the first few times I stepped into an audition to act, it was the same response. People like looking like, okay, she's dressed that way, So now what? What role can we put her in? And I'm like, you still put me in any role you want. It's just, or roles that, fit me for whatever you're doing. And yes, I have to keep the hijab on. Y'all are going to be okay because the hijab does not affect my skills as an actress. It does not affect my skills as a model. And people don't understand. We live in a world. If you live in a world where there's all these different types of people, people want to see their people on your screens, on your runway, so that they can relate. They want to see someone that they can relate to. So if you never want that image out there, how do they relate? How do they even come out to your shows? Why are they going to pay to be, at any of your events if they never see their, people who depict their lifestyle, on your stage, or people who depict their lifestyle on the camera or in the shows, so I just was like, okay, when it comes to acting, how I'm gonna do this. So I went for a few auditions and things of that nature, and I actually got a few roles. I started off doing like small commercials here and there, and then I did a short film called 609, and I think it was like 10 minutes, but it was still good. I was an extra, and I was like, okay, hold up, I like this. I really enjoyed myself. The only thing it was so cold, and I tell y'all about, I do not like the cold. However, I sat through it and I was like, so this is what people have to do, because people think everything is so easy because they just see you there doing it, but they don't know the struggle or the things that you have to go through. Because the day that we filmed that short film, the temperature was extremely low. Like, you could feel like needles like on our skin, and we were outside, and you had to smile like you was not frozen. And we're sitting there, and you have the fake coffee cup in your hand, and you're making like you're drinking, and you're having these fake conversation. But we were, oh my gosh, and it took, I would say it seemed like it took 2 hours or more. And I was like, okay, by the time I leave here, I'm gonna be frozen. And then, they have the little little hot packs. So they gave us these little hot packs to keep our hands warm. That wasn't enough. I was like, I need the hot pack all over my body. So do you have a body pack? And I was like, okay, y'all don't have body packs. And the guy, he looks at me and he's like, what? And I was like, it was a joke. However, I need a whole body pack because I'm cold. Can it go under my clothes? And he started laughing. He was like, you're funny. He was like, no, we don't do body packs. So we we have intermission. So we would run inside and, try to warm up our hands. So that was the first thing I think I did extra. I was an extra in, and I really enjoyed myself. And I was like, okay, I'm going to keep pursuing this, So I'm like, okay, I got acting under my belt. I got a little modeling under my belt. And I would say it occupies your time. It takes a lot out of your time. I've been on set until 2, 3 in the morning, and they have to be to work by 8. You do it. You take a deep breath and you go, okay, and I used to be a coffee drinker, but I'm not a coffee drinker anymore, but I do miss my coffee because my coffees would have helped me. But however, like, you just push through it, and when you're doing something that you love and you're doing things that you enjoy, you just make it happen. My first film that I am in, which is a web series, will hopefully bring it to Amazon, hopefully bring it to whichever thing she's trying to bring it to. This lady named Q, I saw a casting, and she has a film called Substance Abuse. And I was like, substance abuse? I'm like, what's that about? And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and audition and see, how it goes. And I went to the audition, and she was like, okay, I want you as one of the roles, but your character is just being introduced. And I was like, okay. And she's like, and then when we do part 2, you'll have more. That was fine with me. I'm like, hey, wherever you can get in, fit in, So I remember our first, when you do the table read, and everyone's, we're all reading our parts and stuff like that. And I'm an introvert, and most people don't know that about me. So they're always like, they think like, oh, she's always, I do talk a lot, but it's only about things I need to talk about. And I rather, be somewhere reading a book or listening to music. So I was sitting there and I was quiet and stuff like that, and it's my nature pretty much. If I'm sitting somewhere, I like to observe mostly. Um, I remember it was time for me to do my part, and the whole room jumped. Because they did not expect me to, do my part so loud or to, put so much energy into it. And I play a mother. So, of course, I'm fussing at my son. So the guy, he jumped. He said, I was so scared. He was like, no, no, no. He said, I had flashbacks. And I started laughing. And I was like, yeah, And he was like, you're so quiet. I didn't think that voice could come out of you. And I was like, yeah, this is what I love to do. You start off, young, doing plays or doing plays with other kids, but it's still, my passion is definitely in me to do what I do. And then people are like, oh, did you go to acting school? Because the lady, she asked me after the end, at the end, she was like, oh, so you went to acting school? I was like, no acting school, no, none of that. I'm a teacher, I'm a mentor, and I work with the youth. And she was like, you what? I was like, yeah, that's what I do every day. And she was like, okay, and I told her, I was like, I also love to write and things of that nature. And she was like, oh, okay, well, that's good to know. If I need some help writing, the script, I'll let you know. And I was like, oh, hey, I've been looking for, someone who would let me in the door, let me in, as a writer. Because, you always put out there, okay, I'm a writer and things of that nature. But you'll get your nose and people are like, okay, your side looks. And I will never forget, we have been on Zoom rehearsal, and of course this is actually during COVID. You can't, everybody's locked down, can't do nothing, but I was essential worker, so I was always going out to work anyways. And I was at work, and she had text messaged me, and she was like, I need 2 or 3 scenes. I need 2 or 3 scenes. And so I was like, oh, okay, go ahead. And I was like, well, just shoot me what the scenes are supposed to be about or what your vision is. And I'll definitely get back to you with that. And so she texted me and she told me what the scenes were about or what she wanted. And she was like, well, can you please try to have it done by the end of the week? And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. And then about 10 minutes later, I sent them to her and she was like, you're done? I was like, yeah. Like, what do I have to think about? I'm telling you, when you're a creative person and you love to write and you have these things already in your head, like creative persons, people who love to write and things like that and have stories and have films, they already have like 20 films and already compiled inside their mind already because those are the things you've thought about over the years. So I sent it to her within 10 minutes and she said, I thought I was going to have to wait. And I was like, no, here you go. And she was like, wow. She was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you wrote it that fast. I was like, yeah, I really love to write. And I tell people that all the time. I absolutely love writing. I'm a movie buff as well. So it's like, I watch the movies. I enjoy listening to people's stories, their backgrounds, like Tyler Perry's background. His story always amazed me, and I'd be like, look out, Tyler Perry, here I come. Yes, look out, Tyler Perry, here I come. Because he's an inspiration, for me. Or when you listen to people's stories who may have started out late in life doing something, but they always loved to do it in the first place. They just didn't have that support system. No one encouraged those things in them, because even in my field, I'll see amazing children who do amazing art or do amazing poetry or excellent writers, but those things are not encouraged in their daily lives. So they never take that path, and it almost becomes, that back thing they just push on the back burner. And and I know that I was one of those people. I just pushed it on the back burner until now, and now I can bring everything that I wanted into fruition and bring those things to life. So I recently started writing a lot more again. especially since I've tapped more into my creative side and modeling, acting, and then you get to look at other people's scripts and critique it. I say, while y'all critiquing my work, I'm critiquing yours as well. Do know that. you know, um, I just started writing more, and I'm like, okay, how do I find someone or find a team of writers where we write shows and we work together and produce TV shows and things of that nature. I had, of course, networking, you meet all these different types of people and all these different dreams and all these people, all these different goals, and they'll talk about it, but the follow through or to actually doing it, a lot of times that does not happen. So even if you're in talks with someone, I've been in talks with so many different people, and they're like, okay, I want to do this, let's create a film together, let's do this, let's do that. But then when you ask them like the business side of things, like, okay, let's have a contract, let's sit down and talk about it, let's map out how we're gonna do it, it's like, little crickets, and then nothing happens, and then you be talking forever. Like, I've had people approach me about being in films with them or things of that nature, and I'm like, okay, well, go ahead and send me your NDA, and then after you send me an NDA, send me the script so that I can look at it and decide, if I want to be part of your project. You send out the email so they can send you the NDA, and you wait, and you send, you waiting for that script, and they still inboxing you and pretending as if they want to do it. And like, some people, after a while, I tell them, listen, if you're not really trying to work, you can just push on out that inbox, stop inboxing me about things that you're not going to do. So I would say to other people who maybe, trying to get into different fields, whether it's modeling, whether it's acting, whether it's film, whether it's directing, do your research. Do your research on those people, and see how serious they are about what they're trying to do. Also see what other projects have they done before. Have you ever worked with anyone else? Okay, you never worked with anyone, or you started a project with someone, but it was a total flop because y'all didn't follow through. So I have a million one conversations with a million one people, and I always tell them, follow through. You have to follow through. I will tell people I work a good 75 to 80 hours a week at my job, and I get off of work at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, and I am at a photo shoot by 11 a.m. That means I went home. I didn't go to sleep. I went straight to do whatever project, and I will get probably like 4 hours of sleep sometimes. But I know that sacrifice is worth it. That sacrifice is worth whatever I'm trying to do. Like yesterday, I got out of work at 8. I knew that I needed to be at Indie Fashion Show. We had a fashion show, so I had to be there. I think I had to be there by 2. So I already knew that I was going to get like a smidgen worth of sleep, and I would need to be there. So like, I'll schedule my day, and I have like this big whiteboard on my wall. I love my big whiteboard. Many people should have one, because what I do is I write down on that board every place I need to be, all the times I need to be, so that I can map out what I'm going to be doing that day, that week. If I know I have to be part of a project, I know what time I have to be there. So I'll I do cat naps, 30 minutes. They're wonderful. So I do my little cat nap or things of that nature, and then I'll get out there and I'll go and do whatever, I agreed to do, So like last night, we was at the Indie Fashion Show. We were there late. I was tired. My feet were hurting, but I still did that. I wanted to make sure that fashion show, was amazing on my part, and that the designer loved what I did, and that she appreciated my work, and walking on one way with, in her clothes. And I will tell you, about 9 o'clock this morning, she called me to possibly do a photo shoot in her clothing, for her clothing line in a couple of weeks. So your quality work really, really matters. And then when word gets out that you're good to work with, or you're a positive person, you have good energy, people will gravitate to you. You don't have to do much. People are like, oh, okay, I like your style, I like what you do, and I see you working hard. And when you are somewhere, you're professional about it. And that's one of my big thing, is always trying to stay in a professional mindset, in that lane of professionalism. Because I tell you, there's a lot of messiness in the industry, and people love to do a lot of extra, I call it extra stuff. They do extra, and it's not needed. So if you want to do business and you're trying to do business, do business. All that extra stuff is so unnecessary, because I think it slows people down from their actual goals. And that, a lot of times we're distracted by, other things that, we shouldn't be distracted by. I'm into positive energy and positive vibrations, and I meditate a lot. Like, people are like, how do you stay calm? I'm like, I do a lot of meditation, when I can. I'll meditate on the way to work. I'll meditate if I get 15 minutes to myself at work. I work a very high stress job. Just dealing in the nature of the children that I work with. There's a lot of mental health there. There's a lot of abuse there. There's a lot of drug abuse there. There's a lot of neglect there. So you hear a lot of stories that affect you, especially if you're an empath, and I'm an empath. I can take on what they're feeling and their emotions. But what I've learned to do is I've learned to the balance of, I call it catch and release. You catch it, you release it back out there. You don't hold it, you don't keep it, because it can make you physically and mentally ill. It can make you go home to your family or other people and be like this nasty, mean person, because you're really, you're carrying the burden of other people, So I do what's called catch and release a lot about a lot of stuff. Even my coworkers, they were like, why are you always so calm? Oh my gosh, it'd be a crazy situation, but I know that me being crazy, or me being hyper, or me reacting in a certain way is not going to help that situation. I've had kids attempt to commit suicide in front of me, so it's it becomes a lot, because you're constantly trying to save their lives and trying to you know help them understand or help them heal from different things that they're going through. And then also, I think when I decided to really do a lot of writing now, it was also to bring awareness to different things that people are unaware of, that go on in people's homes or go on in the youth's lives, because a lot of times, everybody looks at the generation of children, and we speak negatively on them, but what they are displaying are the things that they actually learned. And who did they learn that from? Apparently our generation. So while you're speaking ill on them, know that this was something that was passed on from generation to generation. And if you're not aware of what really is going on in their lives, or you're not taking that time to step back and find out what's going on in a person's life, you really will miss a lot. What's going on in our children's lives, or what's going on in our even young people like 20, 30. We think everyone's grown, and oh, you're grown, oh, you're grown. No. We still out here struggling struggling to figure out who we are. Sometimes people don't know who they are until they're 50, 60 years old, and they haven't found their path, because they don't have the right guidance, or they made some poor choices in their lives. So I recently started writing more, and I would love to bring to light some of the things that go on in the youth's lives who are in foster care, or who are in group homes, or who are in detention centers, and bring to light just their stories. So I recently started writing, and my goal is, and my thought process is, to produce a show called Fullard House. Fullard House will be about a group of young ladies who are homeless, who will come into the home. It'll be a group home setting, and they'll have few challenges, and they'll talk about their lives. They'll get to talk to a therapist. They'll get to talk to life coaches and things of that nature. But, you'll learn their backstory on how they became homeless. People don't just become homeless. You don't just walk out and say, one day I want to be homeless. So we're going to kind of like, give them people an insight on their lives and the things that happened before they became homeless. Because you have a lot of homeless teenagers. There's a lot of young people that are out there sleeping under bridges, becoming strippers just to pay their bills. And these are male and females. It's not just the females. There's a lot of males out here who have stories that are untold, and stories that, a lot of people who are adults, things that you as an adult wouldn't even survive, that happened to them within their 16 years of life or their 18 years of life. And when you hear their stories, you're like, okay, wait a minute. Like, wow, how could I want you to think any way different than what you are thinking, or your mindset, when you've had trauma after trauma after trauma growing up, and the trauma was never addressed. And that's what we do a lot of times. We don't address the trauma that goes on in people's lives. And, of course, a lot of times we don't believe in therapy. I believe in therapy. Go talk to someone because you have to be able to process what's going on or why something happened. And if you're a child or a youth or whatever, and you're constantly blaming yourself, that's where they get the depression and, suicide from. And you hear so many kids today, young, really, really young, committing suicide. Well, how could a 7-year-old, thinking, how could a 7 or 8-year-old commit suicide? Like, where did you even get that from? Like, where did you learn that from? Because that's something that had to be told to them. That's something, they didn't just go out and say, okay, if I do this, I just die instead. So I like to tell some of the backstories of those things that people, that impact people's lives. I have a few things I'm working on, discussing PTSD, in the young people and older people, and how it affects their lives. So I want to touch on, in some of my fields, on mental health, grieving, the process of grieving, and also telling positive and amazing stories of African American lives. You know, when we watch TV today, and throughout many years that, even growing up, we were always drug dealers, thugs, and comedians. There is so much more to our people than dealing drugs and being thugs and being comedians. Yeah, we're funny. We're naturally funny, I will admit, you know. However, that's not our only role. That's not our only role in society, and that's not the only thing I want my children or my grandchildren or anyone's children or grandchildren seeing. So I would love to bring to light positive stories, and just, bring, have something for our kids to watch besides other people living positive lives, or triumphant over something that was negative, but, having a positive outcome. And just to show the love and commitment that African Americans have to each other and to their children and to their families, from the matriarchs to the family to, the jokesters of the family, but just showing that love and connection, and just, showing something good, showing wholesome families, from 2-parent homes to 1-parent homes. There's a lot of positivity that's out here that our families endure every day and are a part of every single day, but we really don't see that a lot on the TV screen. So, my goal and my dream is to bring that to life and for people to see more of that on the TV screen. And as a writer, I love writing those stories. And actually my co-writer is my daughter. She has an amazing imagination as well. And I had recently, I've been writing, and she was like, "Oh, let me check your work. Let me read it. I want to read it." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, girl!" And she started reading. She's like, "Oh, you should put this scenario in." And I was like, "Oh, really?" I was like, "Oh, okay, then we're gonna stick that scenario in. Why don't you put that scenario in there?" So we'll do. I call it Sunday morning, where we come together and we talk about the show that I'm working on and discuss it, and you know you know just put different things into perspective and say, okay, this should happen, that should happen, and talk about the process of. So it's also a learning process for me because I've never done shows and stuff like that, so I like to watch a lot of YouTube videos, just to learn the process of writing and what a good storyline is. Of course I have my own creativity and my own idea of, but you got to format things correctly. So I watch videos on producing, videos of directing, and just trying to learn and discover how the process works. And then I ask other people a lot of questions. I ask a lot of questions. I just be wanting to know, and I want to know so that when I do my shows, that they're good shows. They're, that I'm producing the best work that I can produce. So, that's part of my journey, is the educational part, where I'm just like, okay, so how do I do this? So how do I get my show on Amazon? Because you're watching everyone else do it, and, you don't know the process. So it's like, you still, while you're doing things, you have to educate yourself on the process. And that's the same thing with modeling and acting. You have to educate yourself on the process. You have to go do research, look into it, things of that nature. I've even done voiceover. Samuel Johnson, he has a web series, and it's on Amazon. It's called Self. It just came out like 2 weeks ago, and I did a voiceover for him for a newscaster. So I'm the voice for a newscaster. I'm not on his show, but I'm still the voice. So that was a good experience for me as well, because he was like, I saw him post, and he was like, "Oh, I need, someone to do a voice for a newscaster." And I was like, "Really? Wait a minute, hold on," and I'm at work. Yeah, I be at work doing stuff. But so I was like, I told my coworker, I was like, "Give me 5 minutes," So I'm like, okay, I'm at work, but I want the role. I want to do this. So he was like, I was like, "How do I send it to you?" Because I'm like, I'm at work, all I got is my phone. My phone, she's my best friend. So he was like, "Do you have a voice recorder on your phone?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I was like, "I think." So then now I'm looking like download different apps so I can send this to him. So I sent it to him, and he listened, and he was like, "Yeah, all right, good." I was like, "Yes, yes." Those small things that are really big things for us as actors, because you're like, wow, someone said yes. Every time someone said yes, it's just like a whole party going on in my head. Like, yeah, they said yes. I'm doing little dances. Yeah, we won't do it here, but yeah, I'll do a bunch of little dances. But that was exciting for me. July 30th will be movie premiere. I found that out this morning as well. I got all kinds of good. I woke up like, oh, I'm looking at my phone like, oh yes. July 30th will be our private movie premiere for substance abuse. So I'm extremely excited about that. I can't wait to the big movie premiere, but the small movie premieres matter as well. So that would be my second movie premiere that I'm going to go to and see what I look like on the big screen. Because, of course, when you're acting, you're doing it, you don't see the whole project once it's put together. So I'm really excited about that. I'm like, okay. I told Q this morning, I was like, "Yes, girl, yes." I was like, "Okay, so what about part 2? I know you just got finished editing, but let's go." Because I'm super excited, I love projects like that, when you get to work with other people and you get to bring their, vision and dream into life, and along with working on your own stuff. So I'm definitely working on my own stuff. So I've been researching, I've been looking for places that I can film and just things like that. I just I talked to two different people who are kind of like just in the process of building their studios and stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch out. And I was like, watch out for me for 2022. I'm watching out for y'all for 2022. I want to see your progress and see what you guys got going on. So I like to watch other people's growth. I love when other people are winning. I just feel like we all out here just trying to win. So it just makes you proud, even the smallest winning moments, because you see that they could do it, and it kind of gives you more encouragement that you can do it. And like when other people see me doing something, they'll say, "Oh my gosh, I saw you," so I was like, "Let me do it." And I just believe in encouraging each other and being, your best self. My makeup artist Mandra, she was over at my house this morning. Yes, I have a makeup artist who shows up to my door when I need my face done. I love Mandra. She's absolutely amazing. Mandra has been with me through the entire process of me becoming an actress and a model. Like when it's time for me to do a show, she's that person I call. And I'm like, okay, I need my face done. I need my face done. And she's like, okay, okay. She's like, what day? What time? And she will show up. I will say, Mandra Cotton Lee, she's absolutely amazing. She came over 11 o'clock this morning. I'm like, okay, fix. And then she was just telling me about some of her successes and things of that nature. And I said, Mandra even went to South Carolina with me. I was in a beauty competition. Well, it was a fashion competition, but you had to do like 3 different categories. And that was my first time doing that. And it was in South Carolina. And it was called what you call a fashion week, and it was in South Carolina, and I saw like the entry fee to be in it, and I was like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and try that. This is my first time being in somewhat like a pageant thing, and and I was like, I don't know how good I'm gonna be, but I'm about to do this. And I went, and it was a very long day. I think we were there from 8 in the morning. First, of course, you had to get there. Then we were there from 8 in the morning till I think 10 o'clock at night. It was so late. I was so tired by the time we got done. But I really, really enjoyed the process. So we had to do 3 categories. I think we had to do futuristic, evening wear, and the 70s. And it was fun. And I participated. And then, like, when it was over, and they were still trying to figure out who won or whatever they did. Like, they do like a little debate over there, and you look like, okay, what you guys doing over there? So I'm in the back. I'm like, it's 10 o'clock at night. It's time for me to pack. I need to go home. This was an amazing experience. Love meeting all you ladies. And the lady was like, oh yeah, they're announcing the winner and stuff. I will say, because it was my first experience, yeah, faux pas. You live and learn. I had got dressed to go home. I'm like, in my jeans, my sneakers. I'm like, my feet hurt. I'm tired. I'm ready to go. And they're announcing, like, who's in, I think it was like 5th place and stuff like that. And as the names are dwindling down, I was like, hold up. Wait a minute. Who's left? Of course, I won first place. And then I came out, and I'm like, get this big old trophy. It's 5 feet tall, and I'm standing in my jeans and stuff and my sneakers, and they're looking like, what? And I was like, I was going home, but thank you. Yes. I laughed. I was like, oh my gosh. So the guy, he comes over, and he was like, never get out of your evening gown. And I was like, I didn't know the process. I was doing it for an experience and to see how fun it was. And you always go in thinking you're going to win. But, I was like, okay, but it's time to go home. And then I was like, okay, they're naming names. I was like, hold on. All right. And then, like, everyone's looking like, wait a minute, why are you not dressed no more? I was like, oops. But I look at that. I look at that trophy all the time, because that was my first big competition. And I'm like, wow, I actually brought home first place, this big old 5-foot trophy. I was glad I wasn't in a small car, because I was supposed to originally, with me and my girl, I was like, we just need a small car. I would not have been able to fit that trophy in the car. And I promise that thing would have been on the hood, the bumper, it'd have been tied on. That would have been the first time I learned how to use what those little bungee cordy things. I would have figured out how to get that trophy in the car. But we was in a nice small SUV, and it was from the front all the way to the back, you know, like you're driving and the top of it's peeking out right here, and I'm like, yes, that's mine.
All right, Amir. That was a funny story. I'm sorry. These children are giving me the blues. We're going to have to move all my interviews to Thursdays so their mama can have them. I'm going to ask you a few questions and we're going to get out of here.
Okay.
So you mentioned that you had some roadblocks because of your religion.
Yes.
Were your parents Muslim?
Yes.
So you were born in America as a Muslim?
Yes.
The question I want to ask is, what's your ethnicity?
I'm African American.
Really?
Yes.
So you're not are your parents from the Middle East?
No.
Really?
No. And that's the other thing. That's what I said. People assume a lot of different things because they don't know the true history of Muslims. You know, there was Muslims in Africa.
Yeah.
You know, we may have been brought over here and we lost our religion through the conformity of slavery, but there's Muslims and they held on to that. My mom was actually Christian. She grew up Christian. When she was, I think 19, she told me the story. When she was 19, 20, she studied religion in college and, you know, she was studying art as well. And she decided that she didn't no longer want to be Christian anymore. And she converted to Islam, you know, and she became Muslim.
Oh, that's
so
what's up.
yeah, yes. So I'm part of a very large African American community of Muslims. There's many African American community of Muslims who are actually Sunni Muslims, because then they also assume that I'm a follower, which I'm not. Nothing wrong with them at all. However, I was born and raised a Sunni Muslim.
Did you raise your kids Muslim?
Yes.
That's dope.
Yes. Yeah. I think at this point there's 4 generations of us.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
So you have a 9 to 5. Well, it sounds like you have a 8 to 8.
Yeah. Some days, like tonight, when I leave here, I gotta go. You know.
That's what's up.
I gotta be at work at 8 p.m. and I work till 8 a.m.
So that's my wife. She got to be to work at 6 p.m. She'll get off at 6 a.m.
Yes.
You said you're doing a few projects now that you've written yourself.
Yes.
What was their names again?
I have the Fullard House.
Uh-huh.
I have Brothers of Hood. I have the Block, and I also have how would I forget my own? Oh my gosh, The Borders.
That's what's up. And you are in production with all of them?
Right now I'm doing Fullard House, and I'm hoping once Fullard House is completed and filmed, as I'm doing those, I'm finishing up like the editing and the seasons for the other shows. And the goal is my goal in my mind, and I'll see how it works out, is once I'm finished one production, I go into the next production, and where I'll have, you know, a show during one season, and then the next season it will be a different show coming on, and the next season a different show coming on. There are 4 seasons in a year, so let's go.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
One last question. Give everybody your information so they can get in contact with you, just in case they want to be a part of these projects you have coming up.
Yes, because we do have a casting call coming up. I don't know exactly all the details, but I definitely will give it to you as soon as I find out. You can find me on Facebook as Ameerah A Rahman, and you can find me on Instagram with Queens Rocks with Truth. You'll see my wonderful face, so you'll know that's me. But yes, those are the 2 ways you can contact me. You want to message me on Facebook or Instagram, you know, please do. Please make sure you're serious about what you're trying to do, because I can be bossy. And, you know, I can be, you know, because I want to make sure that I'm following through on my dreams while I'm telling other people about following through. The best thing to be is an example, you know, the person who follows through. You can't say one thing and then
Not
be
do
a
it.
different way and handle yourself a different way. So whatever I tell people, that's how I live. I live by those words and those things, and I try to make sure that, you know, if I have an initial thing and I've told you I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna be somewhere, I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna be there. You know, and if
Absolutely.
something comes up, which is a rarity, you know, I'll make sure I make it up, you know, and be like, okay, you know, but that really happens to me. You know, I try not to overbook, you know, sometimes I'll look and I'll be like, oh, and I'll be like, oh no, I can't do that. You know, like today, someone called me a band fashion show. I was like, oh no, I got Big LAC TV. No. Yes,
That's
you
right.
know, prioritize. And
That's
whatever you
right.
commit to, really commit, because the only person you cheating in life is yourself if you're not committed and you don't follow through for your own self, you know.
True story.
So, yes.
I really appreciate you coming through.
Yeah, it
You
was a
had-
pleasure.
You one of the most entertaining guests I've
Okay.
had.
Well,
And I
that's good to
apologize
know.
for the children,
Oh,
especially this one behind me.
hey, they come part of the package. Sometimes you gotta take them with you. I be like backpack
Yeah,
kid,
we got to
purse.
figure this out. We're gonna have to figure this out. But I appreciate you coming through.
All right, thank you, thank you for having me. I really appreciate that.
Oh, it was a no-brainer. You doing too much not to be seen.
Hey,
That's what I'm talking about. Let's go on and get out of here. It's been a Big LAC Show, man. What do you